You might remember your grandfather speaking about it. Perhaps your father owned one. Maybe you were fortunate enough to ride in one as a child, squeezed into that narrow back seat, watching the world go by through those upright windows. The Austin 7 wasn't just another motor car. It was the car that gave ordinary British families their freedom. Those of us old enough to remember post-war Britain know what real austerity looked like. But imagine going back even further, to the early 1920s. The Great War had ended just 4 years earlier, and Britain was a broken nation trying to find its feet again. 715,000 men hadn't come home. 2.5 million people were unemployed by 1921. Families who'd sent their sons to the trenches now queued for bread. In those grey years, owning a motor car was something you didn't even dream about unless your surname came with a manor house attached. The roads belonged to the wealthy in their great touring cars, and to working men on motorcycles, often with the wife and children crammed into a sidecar, exposed to every raindrop and gust of wind. That was mobility for the common man, uncomfortable, undignified, and often downright dangerous. Then Sir Herbert Austin did something extraordinary. His company was bankrupt. His board of directors wanted nothing to do with small cars, but he believed there had to be a better way. Working in secret at his own home with a young draftsman barely out of his teens, he created what seemed impossible. A proper 4-cylinder motor car with weather protection and electric lights that a working man could actually afford. £225 in 1922. Within 4 years, £165 for the steel-bodied saloon. For the first time, a tradesman could visit customers across the county. A doctor could reach patients in distant villages. Young couples could court beyond the boundaries of their own neighborhoods. Families could pack a picnic and drive to the coast on a Sunday. This wasn't just about transportation, it was about dignity, independence, and possibility. Nearly 290,000 Austin 7s were built before the Second World War stopped production in 1939. That little car became the first BMW, launched William Lyons toward creating Jaguar, and gave Nissan its start in the motor industry. But more than that, it gave Britain back its hope during the darkest economic years between the wars. Section 1. Birth of the baby Austin. Herbert Austin's journey began not in triumph, but in near ruin. Before the First World War, the Austin Motor Company at Longbridge had produced no fewer than 17 different models. The war brought military contracts, but peace proved harder to navigate. The company entered receivership in 1921. With his board blocking any radical ventures, Austin took an extraordinary gamble. He would design his small car personally, financing it with his own money. Working in secret at his home, Lickey Grange, Austin brought in a young draftsman named Stanley Edge. Austin sketched his initial concepts on the billiard table, though Edge later admitted he did most of the actual design work in an alcove off the billiard room. Edge, who had started in Austin's aircraft design shop at age 14 in 1917, brought fresh thinking unburdened by automotive convention. What emerged was deceptively simple yet remarkably sophisticated. The chassis featured 2 main beams in an A-frame design. Suspension employed quarter-elliptic leaf springs at the rear and a transverse half-elliptic spring at the front. 4-wheel drum brakes were standard from the beginning. The heart of the car was its 4-cylinder side-valve engine. The original specification from 1922 featured a capacity of 696 cubic centimeters and 7.2 horsepower. This proved slightly underpowered, and from March 1923 the engine was enlarged to 747 cubic centimeters, yielding 10.5 horsepower. This engine would remain fundamentally unchanged throughout production. The cylinder block was cast iron with a detachable head mounted on an aluminium crankcase. Cooling employed thermosiphon circulation without a water pump. A 3-speed manual gearbox was integral to the engine. Remarkably, for 1922, Austin and Edge arranged the pedals in the now universal configuration: clutch, brake, accelerator, from left to right. The Austin 7 helped standardize what would become the global norm. Austin patented his innovations in his own name, charging his company royalties of 2 guineas per car. Section 2. From Skepticism to Success. The Austin 7 made its public debut in July 1922 at Claridge's Hotel in London. The initial reaction was mixed. Some in the motoring press derided it as too small to succeed. But Austin understood his market better than the critics. At £225, the 7 cost roughly the same as a motorcycle and sidecar combination, but offered something those contraptions could never provide: dignity. A family of 4 could sit together under a proper roof, protected from the elements. It was a real motorcar. Production began in 1923, with 2,500 units sold in the first year. Herbert Austin had hoped for double that number, but sales built steadily. Owners reported achieving 47 miles per imperial gallon. The tiny engine, though producing modest power, proved nearly unbreakable in regular use. By 1926, production volumes had increased dramatically and the price dropped to £145. When Austin introduced the steel-paneled saloon that year, it was priced at £165. That's equivalent to roughly £12,000 in today's money, but the 7's impact on mobility was far greater than a simple inflation calculation suggests. Consider what this meant in practical terms. A tradesman could expand his business, a doctor could reach rural patients, young couples could court beyond their immediate neighborhoods. Families could take day trips to the seaside. Britain, still recovering from the Great War, was beginning to move again. By 1929, 100,000 Austin 7s had been sold, and the car commanded 37% of the British car market. The motorcycle and sidecar industry essentially collapsed. Cycle cars disappeared entirely. The 7 had done to Britain what the Model T Ford had done to America. Production continued until 1939. By that time, approximately 290,000 examples had left the Longbridge factory. Around 7,000 survive today. Section 3. William Lyons and the birth of Jaguar. The 7's simple chassis made it ideal for coach builders. None would have greater significance than the Austin 7 Swallow. In 1922, William Lyons and William Walmsley established the Swallow Sidecar Company in Blackpool. They prospered building motorcycle sidecars, but Lyons harbored bigger ambitions. When he first saw the Austin 7, he recognized opportunity. Through a dealer in Bolton, Lyons obtained an Austin 7 rolling chassis, apparently without Austin's official approval. He commissioned Cyril Holland, Swallow's only professional coach builder, to design elegant coachwork. Holland had served his apprenticeship at Lanchester and would later become chief body engineer. Holland created a distinctive open tourer with a bright two-tone color scheme and styling befitting a car costing twice the price. At £175, the Austin 7 Swallow cost only £50 more than a basic tourer, yet it looked special. The Swallow proved enormously popular. In 1928, Lyons introduced a saloon version, and demand became so strong that he relocated from Blackpool to much larger premises in Coventry. Between the late 1920s and 1932, approximately 3,500 swallow-bodied Austin 7s were produced. The success of the Swallow laid the financial foundation for what would become, by 1945, Jaguar Cars Limited. When you admire an E-Type or XJ, remember that the company's roots trace directly back to Herbert Austin's little car. Today, swallow-bodied Austin 7s regularly trade in the high 20s in European currency, reflecting both their beauty and their historical significance. Section 4. Racing Success and the Ulster Legend. The Austin 7, despite weighing barely 750 pounds and producing perhaps 15 horsepower in standard trim, was a formidable racing machine. Once initial lubrication issues were addressed, the little engine proved remarkably robust under racing conditions. Herbert Austin's son-in-law, Arthur Waite, began achieving notable results at Brooklands in March 1923. E.C. Gordon England built a special lightweight two-seater body weighing just 20 pounds and entered it in the Junior Car Club 200-mile race at Brooklands in October 1923. He finished second and set 5 new class records. This success led Austin to offer 2 sports models in January 1924, the Sports and the Brooklands Supersports. Each Brooklands Supersports was sold with a certificate proving it had achieved 80 miles per hour at Brooklands. By 1925, Gordon England held 19,750 cubic centimetre class records. But the Seven's greatest racing achievement came with the Ulster. In 1928, Austin decided to build a factory sports model. The car that emerged was launched in July that year, but it wouldn't receive its famous name until after the 1929 Royal Automobile Club Tourist Trophy race held at the Ards Circuit in County Down, Northern Ireland. In that race, Archie Fraser-Nash finished 3rd overall and S.V. Holbrook 4th, both driving supercharged Austin 7s. For a tiny 747 cubic centimetre car to place 3rd and 4th against much larger machinery was extraordinary. The model was promptly renamed the Ulster. The Ulster featured a retuned engine, a chassis that sat 3 inches lower than standard, and an aerodynamic boat-tail body with no doors. Available in both unsupercharged and supercharged versions, it was priced at £185 and £225, respectively. Production ran from April 1930 until early 1932, with approximately 300 examples built. Today, genuine Ulsters command prices approaching £40,000. The Ulster's racing success extended beyond the tourist trophy. Sammy Davis and Frederick Gordon Lennox, the 9th Duke of Richmond, won the Brooklands 500-mile race in an Ulster. Perhaps more significantly, the Austin 7 became the foundation for countless racing specials after the Second World War. Bruce McLaren's first competition car was based on a 7. So was the very first Lotus, the Mark I. The 7 proved that you didn't need a large budget to go racing. This democratization of motorsport would have profound effects on British racing culture. Section 5. The global reach. The Austin 7's influence extended far beyond Britain through licensed production and copying. The most famous licensed version was the Dixie, built in Germany by Fahrzeugfabrik Eisenach. In 1927, Eisenach signed a licensing agreement and began producing the Dixie DA1. The following year, in 1928, Bayerische Motorenwerke, BMW, purchased the Eisenach factory and continued building the Dixie. This car became BMW's first automobile. The Dixie was produced until 1932, with 25,300 units built. Today, BMW acknowledges the Austin 7 as the foundation of its automobile manufacturing heritage. In 1994, BMW gifted a 1931 Dixie to the British Motor Industry Heritage Trust. In France, Rosengart began building licensed 7s in 1928. Rosengart production continued well into the 1930s. The American Austin Car Company was founded in 1929 in Butler, Pennsylvania. The venture struggled in the American market, but provided affordable transportation during the Depression years. In Japan, Nissan used the 7 design as the basis for their first cars. This eventually led to a 1952 agreement for Nissan to build and sell Austins in Japan. Rolling chassis were also exported to Australia, where local coach builders like Holden's Motor Body Builders created bodies suited to Australian conditions. The 7's global reach demonstrates that Herbert Austin had created not just a good car for Britain, but a design so fundamentally sound that it could be adapted to different markets, climates, and cultural expectations. Section 6. Before the Beetle. Our title specifically mentions the Volkswagen Beetle, and for good reason. The comparison highlights how the Austin 7 achieved what Ferdinand Porsche and Adolf Hitler would attempt more than a decade later. The Beetle's story is well known. In May 1934, Hitler commissioned Porsche to develop a people's car that could accommodate 2 adults and 3 children. The first prototypes appeared in the late 1930s, but series production didn't begin until after the Second World War. By the time the Beetle went into meaningful production in the late 1940s, the Austin 7 had already been in production for over 2 decades and had sold approximately 290,000 units. It had already motorized Britain, spawned BMW, laid the foundation for Jaguar, and established the basic control layout we still use today. The engineering approaches were fundamentally different. The Beetle employed an air-cooled rear-mounted engine, sophisticated but also more complex. The 7 used conventional water cooling and a front-mounted engine. More importantly, their social contexts differed dramatically. The 7 emerged from a private company in receivership, designed by 2 men working essentially in secret, financed personally by its creator. It succeeded in a free market. The Beetle emerged from a totalitarian state's decree, backed by massive industrial resources and political will. Both cars proved historically significant. Both motorized their respective nations. But the Austin 7 got there first, did it without state backing, and established the template that others would follow. Section 7. Current Values and Collectability. Today's market for Austin 7s reflects both the car's historical significance and the wide variation in models and conditions. At the lower end, basic 7 saloons or Tourers in average condition trade for roughly £7,000 to £12,000 in the UK market. The chummy Tourer averages around £12,000 in good condition. Well-executed period-style racing specials can command mid-20s in European currency. The really valuable 7s are the rare variants with solid provenance. Swallow-bodied cars regularly appear at £28,000 to £30,000. Genuine Ulster models, particularly those with documented racing history, can exceed £40,000. The most expensive Austin 7 to sell publicly reached £40,260. Several factors drive values today. First, originality matters tremendously. Second, documentation makes a significant difference. Third, body style and model variant significantly affect value. Fourth, condition matters. Though a lightly patinated, original car can sometimes command higher prices than a fresh restoration. For someone considering entering the Austin 7 market, the news is largely positive. These cars remain relatively affordable compared to many other pre-war classics. Parts availability is excellent. The club network provides tremendous support, and 7s are genuinely usable and enjoyable to drive. You won't be covering ground quickly. 50 miles per hour represents the upper limit for most examples, but the experience is engaging in ways that modern cars cannot replicate. You're intimately connected to every control, every mechanical movement. Values have remained remarkably stable over the past decade. Unlike some classics that experience speculation-driven bubbles, 7s are bought primarily by enthusiasts who actually use and enjoy them. The Austin 7 story resonates across a century because it represents something fundamental about human ingenuity and the democratization of technology. Here was a car that shouldn't have succeeded, designed in secret by a bankrupt company's founder and a teenage draftsman, launched into an economically devastated post-war Britain. Yet it not only succeeded, it transformed British society. It gave ordinary families mobility they'd never imagined possible. It created an entire industry of small car manufacturing. It established engineering principles and control layouts that became universal standards. Think about the 7's legacy. BMW exists as an automobile manufacturer because of the Dixie. Jaguar began building bodies for the 7. The modern Mini, introduced in 1959, was initially called the Austin 7 Mini. Nissan's automotive roots trace back to the 7. The special builder tradition in British motorsport owes its existence to the 7's simple, adaptable chassis. More than 290,000 Austin 7s were built between 1922 and 1939. Around 7,000 survive today. Every one represents a direct connection to a pivotal moment in automotive and social history. The 7 achieved what the Volkswagen Beetle is often credited with, but it did so earlier without state intervention, through the simple expedient of being a genuinely good car that met a real need at a price people could afford. If you've owned an Austin 7 or driven one, or remember seeing them on British roads, we'd love to hear your experiences in the comments below. These cars meant something to the generations who drove them when new, and they continue to mean something to those who preserve them today. If this video helped you understand the Austin 7's significance in automotive history, please consider subscribing to the channel and giving the video a thumbs up. Your support helps us continue producing detailed, well-researched content about the cars that shaped our world. Thank you for watching. The Austin 7 may have been small, but its impact was enormous. Britain's first true people's car deserves to be remembered, celebrated, and understood for the remarkable achievement it represented. Until next time, keep the history alive.